The great hall was silent except for the soft hum of alien technology. Sarah Chen stood at the center of the massive chamber, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, 12 towering platforms held the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Each one looked down at her with something between disgust and pity that she was the only human in the room. The only human who would hear what came next. The ethereal speaker floated above its platform like a living star. Its body was made of pure energy that shifted and pulsed with each word it spoke. When it talked, the sound came from everywhere, at once filling the chamber with a voice that felt like thunder in her bones. "Human representative," the speaker began, "you have been brought before this council to hear our final judgment on your species." Sarah kept her face calm, but her heart was racing. She had known this day would come. For 50 years, humanity had pushed further into space, building colonies and expanding their reach. Every step had made the other species more nervous. Too. The left of the speaker, the Kethra ambassador, shifted on its platform. The creature looked like a giant insect crossed with a snake, its black eyes never blinking as it stared at her. The Kethra had been the first to call humans dangerous. They said humans bred too fast and spread too far. "Your species," the speaker continued, "has been found guilty of 3 crimes against galactic order." The charges appeared in the air above Sarah's head, written in glowing letters that she could somehow understand despite being in dozens of alien languages. "First," said the speaker, "excessive territorial expansion. In 50 Earth years, humans have established over 200 colonies across 47 star systems. This rate of growth violates the Galactic Expansion Treaty." Sarah wanted to laugh. The treaty had been written by species that took centuries to establish a single new world. Humans had never agreed to it. They had never even been asked. "Second," the speaker went on, "refusal to comply with population control measures. The Galactic Health Council has repeatedly warned Earth about unsustainable breeding rates. Your species continues to grow without limit." This time Sarah did speak. "We've never harmed another species through our growth. We build our colonies on empty worlds." A sound like grinding metal came from the right side of the chamber. It was the crystalline collective laughing. Their representative looked like a walking diamond, its faceted body reflecting the chamber's lights in painful flashes. "Empty worlds that we might have used," the collective said in a voice like breaking glass. "Empty space that belonged to all of us. The galaxy is vast," Sarah replied. "There's room for everyone." "Which brings us," the speaker said, cutting off any response, "to the third and most serious charge. Aggressive adaptability." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Sarah had heard this phrase before, whispered in diplomatic meetings and alien news broadcasts. It was what they called humanity's greatest strength and what made them most afraid. "Your species," the speaker explained, "adapts to any environment with dangerous speed. You change your technology, your tactics, your very biology to overcome any obstacle. This makes you unpredictable. This makes you a threat." Sarah looked around the chamber at the 12 species that ruled the galaxy. The ethereal speaker with its energy body that had remained unchanged for 1,000,000 years. The Kethra with their rigid insect society that followed the same patterns for millennia. The crystalline collective that grew new members like living rocks, identical and eternal. They were all afraid of change. And humans were nothing but change. "You're afraid because we don't stay the same," Sarah said. "You're afraid because we solve problems instead of accepting them." The chamber erupted in alien sounds. Clicks, hisses, electronic squeals that her translator couldn't process. But she understood the emotion behind them: anger, fear, and underneath it all, something else. Envy. The speaker raised one glowing appendage and the noise stopped. "Your species has 72 standard hours to comply with our demands. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be abandoned. All humans must return to Earth or your original solar system." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "That's impossible. We have over 30 million people living on colony worlds. Some of them have never even seen Earth. Furthermore," the speaker continued, as if she hadn't spoken, Humanity must accept genetic modification to reduce your adaptability. Your reproductive rate will be limited. Your technological advancement will be controlled. You wanted to change what makes us human, Sarah said. We want to make you safe, the speaker replied. Safe for the galaxy, safe for yourselves. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. She looked at each of the 12 species in turn, reading their alien faces as best she could. Fear was there, yes, but also something else. They had already made their decision. This wasn't a trial or a negotiation. This was a sentencing. And, if we refuse? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The Kethver ambassador spoke for the first time, its voice like the sound of dry leaves scraping against stone. Then your species will be removed from the galaxy, permanently. The word removed was translated in a dozen different ways, but they all meant the same thing. Extinction. Sarah nodded slowly. I need to contact my government. You have 72 hours, the speaker said, not one moment longer. The platforms began to move, carrying their alien occupants away from the center of the chamber. Soon Sarah was alone with just her escorts, two tall figures in environmental suits who had brought her here and would take her back to her ship. As they walked through the corridors of the space station, Sarah's mind was racing. 72 hours to convince 30 million colonists to abandon everything they had built. 72 hours to make humanity agree to become something less than what they were. It wasn't enough time. It couldn't be done, but maybe that was the point. Her ship was small, built for speed rather than comfort. As soon as she was aboard, Sarah activated the quantum communicator and sent an emergency signal toward Earth. The response came back within minutes. Admiral Marcus Rivera's face appeared. On her screen, his weathered features grim. I watched the whole thing through your recorder, he said. How bad is it? As bad as we thought it would be, Sarah replied. Maybe worse. They're not just asking us to leave the colonies. They want to change us. Make us into something that can't threaten them. Rivera was quiet for a moment. In the background, Sarah could see other officers moving frantically. The colonies? All of them. 72 hours to evacuate or they start shooting. 30 million people, Rivera said. Softly. We don't have ships for that kind of evacuation. Even if we did, where would we put them? Sarah knew he was right. Earth was already crowded. The lunar colonies and Mars settlements were at capacity. There was nowhere for 30 million refugees. To go, there might be another way, Rivera said carefully. Something we've been working on. Just in case, Sarah leaned forward. What kind of something? I can't discuss it over an open channel. Get back to Earth as fast as you can. We'll brief you when you arrive. Marcus, Sarah said, whatever you're thinking, we only have 3 days. I know, Rivera replied, but maybe that's all we need. The transmission ended, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts as her ship began the long journey home. Behind her, the alien space station grew smaller until it was just another star in the vast darkness. She didn't know what Rivera had planned, but she knew one thing for certain. Humanity had spent 50 years reaching for the stars. They weren't going to give up now just because someone told them to. The aliens wanted them gone. They might just get their wish, but not in the way they expected. The emergency council meeting had been going for 6 hours. Sarah Chun sat at the long table in the underground bunker beneath Geneva, watching as humanity's leaders argued about the impossible choice they faced. Outside, protests filled every major city on Earth as news of the alien ultimatum spread. Admiral Rivera stood at the front of the room, his uniform crisp despite the sleepless night they had all endured. Behind him, a massive screen showed the locations of every human colony in the galaxy. 200 red dots scattered across 47 star systems, each one representing millions of lives. The math is simple, Rivera said, his voice cutting. Through the angry voices, we have 1,800 transport ships of various sizes. Even if we pack them beyond safety limits, we could move maybe 8 million people in 72 hours. That leaves 22 million colonists with nowhere to go. President Martinez leaned back in her chair, her face pale. So we're talking about abandoning millions of our own people. "Or we fight," said General Kim from across the table. "We've got military assets on most of the colony worlds. We could make a stand. Against 12 species that have been spacefaring for thousands of years longer than us." Rivera shook his head. "We'd be slaughtered." Sarah had been quiet through most of the debate, but now she spoke up. "You mentioned something on the com channel, another way." Rivera nodded and touched a control on the table. The screen changed, showing a new image that made several people gasp. It was a massive excavation site, clearly underground, with thousands of workers and machines carving out enormous chambers in solid rock. "Project Deep Root," Rivera said. "We've been working on it for 15 years, ever since we first detected hostile alien surveillance of our colonies." The idea was simple. If someone ever tried to force us off our worlds, we needed a way to stay without them knowing about it. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the head of colonial engineering, stood up. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her voice was strong. "Every major colony has been building underground installations. Not just simple bunkers, but complete cities. Manufacturing facilities, hydroponic farms, fusion reactors, everything needed to support large populations for years." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Sarah stared at the image on the screen. "How many people can these facilities support?" "All of them," Elena said simply. "Every colonist we have, plus room for expansion. The networks are connected by quantum communication systems that are almost impossible to detect. As far as the galaxy knows, these installations don't exist." President Martinez frowned. "If we've had this capability for 15 years, why didn't you tell us?" "Because the fewer people who knew, the better," Rivera replied. "This kind of secret only works if it stays secret. Even now, most of the colonists don't know about the full extent of the underground cities. They think they're just emergency shelters?" Sarah was beginning to understand. "You're not planning to evacuate the colonies. You're planning to hide them." "Not hide," Elena corrected. "Relocate. The surface colonies will be abandoned, just like the aliens demanded, but the people won't leave. They'll go underground and continue their lives in facilities that the alien surveillance can't detect." General Kim looked skeptical. "What about the evacuation ships? The aliens will be watching. They'll expect to see millions of refugees heading back to Earth." Rivera smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "They'll see exactly what they expect to see." The screen changed again, showing the interior of what looked like a standard colony transport ship. But as Sarah watched, she realized something was wrong. The people moving around the corridors seemed slightly off, their movements too precise, their interactions too perfect. "Holograms," she whispered. "Advanced ones," Elena confirmed. "We've been developing the technology for years. Each evacuation ship will carry maybe 50 real people to maintain the illusion, plus cargo containers full of holographic projectors. To any external sensor, the ships will appear fully loaded with refugees." Dr. James Park, the head of Colonial Psychology, raised his hand. "What about the people? How do we convince 30 million colonists to fake their own evacuation and then disappear underground? Some of these people have been living on the surface for generations." Elena's expression grew serious. "We tell them the truth. All of it. But this isn't just about surviving the next few months, but about securing humanity's future in the galaxy. The aliens want us contained to the Sol system because they're afraid of what we might become if we keep expanding. Going underground isn't surrender, it's the first move in a much longer game." Rivera stepped forward. "We've already begun implementing the plan. Colony ships launched from 12 different worlds in the past 6 hours. To alien observers, it looks like we're panicking and starting early evacuations. In reality, those ships are carrying the equipment needed to expand the underground facilities." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "You started this before the council even met?" "We had to," Rivera said. 72 hours isn't much time to coordinate an operation this size. The evacuation. Ships need to maintain a steady flow over the next 3 days or the aliens will get suspicious. President Martinez stood up slowly. "This is incredibly risky." If the aliens discover what we're really doing, then we're no worse off than we would be if we tried to fight them openly, Rivera replied. But if it works, we buy ourselves time. Time to prepare, time to learn, time to become something the aliens never expected us to become. The next 18 hours were a blur of activity. Sarah found herself aboard a military transport heading to Kepler 442b, one of humanity's largest agricultural colonies. Her job was to coordinate the evacuation illusion with the local administrators. When she arrived, the colony looked like it was in chaos. Ships were landing and taking off constantly, their holds apparently full of desperate refugees. But Sarah could see the truth. Most of the ships were nearly empty, their passenger manifests filled with sophisticated holographic duplicates. Colony Administrator James Walsh met her at the spaceport. He was a big man with calloused hands and the kind of deep tan that came from years of working under an alien sun. "Dr. Chun," he said, shaking her hand. "Welcome to the greatest magic trick in human history. How are the colonists handling it?" Sarah asked as they walked toward the administrative complex. "Better than expected," Walsh replied. "Most of them are angry about being forced to abandon their homes. But when we explained that they weren't really leaving, that they were just moving downstairs, the mood changed. People are actually excited about the underground cities. Some families are already moving involuntarily. They took an elevator down into the colony's underground levels. What Sarah saw there took her breath away. The excavation had revealed a vast network of chambers and tunnels, lit by artificial sunlight and filled with the sounds of construction. Thousands of people were working to expand living quarters, install hydroponic systems, and set up manufacturing equipment. The main living areas can support the entire surface population, Walsh explained as they walked through a chamber the size of a sports stadium. Plus, we've got workshops, schools, medical facilities, even recreational areas. In some ways, life down here will be better than it was on the surface. Sarah stopped walking. "This isn't just about hiding from the aliens, is it? You're building something permanent." Walsh nodded. "Every underground colony is designed to be completely self-sufficient. They can manufacture everything from farming equipment to spacecraft components, and they're all connected by quantum communication networks that the aliens can't detect or intercept." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked. "Because you're going back to Earth," Walsh said. "And when you do, you need to understand what you're really reporting. This isn't just an evacuation. It's the largest infrastructure project in human history. We're not just hiding from the aliens. We're preparing to surprise them." That evening, Sarah stood on the observation deck of her transport ship as it lifted off from Kepler 442b below her. The colony's surface installations were being systematically shut down and abandoned. To any alien observer, it would look like another human world giving up in the face of superior force, but Sarah knew better. 50 meters below the surface, 30,000 people were settling into their new underground homes. And across the galaxy, the same thing was happening on dozens of other worlds. The aliens wanted humanity gone from the galaxy. They were about to get their wish, at least on the surface, but underneath, in the dark places where alien sensors couldn't reach, humanity was digging in deeper than ever before. The evacuation ships continued their steady stream toward Earth, their holds apparently full of defeated refugees. None of the alien observers noticed that the same holographic passengers seemed to appear on multiple ships, or that the quantum signatures of the vessels suggested they were carrying far less mass than their manifests claimed. Sarah settled back in her chair and closed her eyes. In 60 hours, the alien ultimatum would expire. The galaxy would believe that humanity had been successfully contained to a single star system. But the truth was very different. The truth was that humanity had just disappeared into the shadows of 100 worlds, and no one was watching closely enough to notice. The massive alien fleet hung in space like a cloud of death. 3,000 ships from 12 different species, each one built for war. At the center of the formation, the Kepler command vessel Destiny's Edge stretched nearly 20 kilometers from bow to stern. its black hull bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Fleet Commander Zekthar stood on the bridge of his flagship, his forearms crossed behind his chitinous back. Through the great viewing screen, he could see the blue marble of Earth growing larger as they approached. Such a small world to have caused so much trouble. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered. "Dozens of star systems." The communications officer, a crystalline being whose body sparkled in the bridge lighting, turned toward him. "All human colonies report complete evacuation, Commander. Our surveillance shows no signs of continuing habitation on any of the abandoned worlds." "And the refugee ships?" "The last transport vessels entered Earth's solar system 18 hours ago. Our long-range sensors confirm massive overcrowding on Earth and its moon colonies. The humans appear to have accepted our terms." Zekthar nodded. Slowly, in his long military career, he had seen many species face extinction. Most fought desperately until the end, throwing themselves against superior forces with nothing but courage and futile hope. But humans had surprised him. When faced with overwhelming odds, they had simply given up. It was almost disappointing. Behind him, the fleet's senior commanders gathered around the tactical display. Representatives from all 12 species of the Galactic Confederation stood together, united in their purpose for the first time in centuries. The ethereal speaker floated near the center of the group, its energy form pulsing with what might have been satisfaction. "The human problem has been resolved more easily than we anticipated," it said, its voice resonating through the bridge. "Perhaps they were not as dangerous as we believed. Or perhaps they are smarter than we gave them credit for," said Commander Veltar of the Aquatic Federation. Her water-filled environment suit made speaking difficult, but her words carried the wisdom of a species that had ruled the oceans of a dozen worlds. "Submission in the face of impossible odds is sometimes the wisest choice. Wisdom or cowardice," growled General Fakemore of the Stone Legion, his rocky hide scarred from 1,000 battles. "The result is the same. They have been contained." Zekthar studied the data flowing across his screens. The human evacuation had been remarkably efficient. In just 72 hours, they had moved what appeared to be their entire colonial population back to their home system. Most species would have needed months to accomplish such a massive relocation. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through." The main screen flickered and changed to show a human, female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Zekthar recognized her from the intelligence files. Sarah Chen, the human representative who had stood before the Galactic Council just days before. "Commander Zekthar," she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "I am Sarah Chen, speaking on behalf of the Earth government. We have complied with the Confederation's demands. All our colonies have been evacuated. We ask that you honor the agreement and spare our homeworld." Zekthar leaned forward. "Your species has indeed surprised us with your compliance, Ambassador Chun. However, the Galactic Council has reconsidered the terms of your containment." He saw something flicker in the human's eyes, fear, perhaps, or anger. It was hard to tell with these strange mammals. "The Council has determined," Zekthar continued, "that allowing your species to remain in the galaxy, even contained to a single system, poses an unacceptable long-term risk. Your adaptability, your unpredictable nature, your tendency toward rapid technological advancement. These traits make you a permanent threat to galactic stability." "You're going to kill us all," Sarah said quietly. "We prefer to think of it as ensuring galactic peace for future generations." The ethereal speaker interjected, its form brightening. "Your species will be remembered as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked growth." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Zekthar turned back to his officers. "Begin deployment of the bioweapons. I want complete sterilization of all worlds in the Sol system within 6 standard hours." Across the fleet, massive ships began to position themselves around Earth and its colonies. The bioweapons they carried were the most advanced in the galaxy, designed to target specific genetic markers. Every human on every world would be dead within days, and the planets would remain habitable for future colonization by more peaceful species. Dr. Keshari of the Biotechnical Collective monitored the weapon deployment from her laboratory ship. The insectoid scientist had spent decades perfecting the viral agents that would end the human threat. Each virus was engineered to be fast-acting and completely lethal to human biology while leaving other life forms untouched. Deployment complete. She reported to the command ship. All bioweapon pods are in position around the target worlds. We can begin release on your order. But as she spoke, something on her sensors caught her attention. Commander, I'm detecting some unusual readings. Explain, Zekthar demanded. There appears to be some kind of energy buildup in the asteroid belt. Multiple sources, very faint. It could be nothing but ... Investigate, Zekthar ordered. Send a scout squadron. The 6 ships that broke away from the main fleet were among the fastest in the Confederation Navy. Their sensors were designed to detect the smallest anomalies. In space, the kind of hidden threats that could endanger a fleet. What they found in the asteroid belt made no sense. Command, this is Scout Leader Velkus, came the report over the com. We're detecting artificial structures embedded in several asteroids. They appear to be ... human in design. Zekthar's mandibles clicked together in confusion. That's impossible. Our surveillance showed complete evacuation of all human installations. Sir, these installations weren't here 3 days ago. I'm certain of it. They appear to have been hastily constructed or revealed. The tactical display updated with the scout squadron's findings. Dozens of asteroids showed signs of human technology. Power signatures, communication arrays, and what looked suspiciously like weapon emplacements. It could be automated defense. Systems, suggested General Fakemore, left behind to delay our advance. But Zekthar was beginning to feel uneasy. In his experience, humans didn't abandon anything useful. If they had left technology behind, it was for a reason. Sir, the communications officer called out urgently, we're receiving multiple transmissions from across the galaxy. Our monitoring? Stations at the abandoned human colonies are reporting anomalies. What kind of anomalies? Power signatures. Deep underground, very faint, but definitely artificial. And, sir, they're coming from worlds we confirmed were completely evacuated. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Zekthar felt his blood run cold as he realized what the humans had done. They never left, he whispered. The ethereal speaker pulsed brighter. Impossible. Our sensors detected the evacuation. We tracked the refugee ships ourselves. The ships were decoys, Zekthar said, his voice growing louder. The evacuation was an illusion. They've been hiding on those worlds the entire time. Chaos erupted on the bridge as officers from every species began shouting at once. The careful plan to contain and eliminate humanity was falling apart as they realized they had been outmaneuvered by the very species they thought they had beaten. How many? Zekthar demanded. How many colonies are still active? The answer came back from monitoring stations across the galaxy. Every single world that humans had been forced to abandon was showing signs of continued habitation. Not on the surface, where alien sensors could detect them, but deep underground where they had been invisible to orbital surveillance. All of them, the communications officer reported, his crystalline body dimming with shock. Every human colony is still active. The evacuation was completely fake. Zekthar stared at the tactical display as red dots began appearing across the galactic map. Each one represented a human colony that was supposed to be empty but was actually thriving in secret. In 3 days, humanity had made the entire Galactic Confederation look like fools. Commander, Dr. Keshari called from her laboratory ship, if the humans have been preparing for this, if they've had time to study our surveillance methods and develop countermeasures ... then they know we're coming, Zekthar finished. And they've had time to prepare. For the first time in his military career, the Kethver commander felt something he had never experienced before when facing humans. Not anger or disgust, but genuine fear. The humans hadn't been defeated. They had been planning ... and now, as his fleet hung in orbit around Earth, preparing for what should have been a simple extermination. Zekthar began to wonder if they had walked into a trap. "Signal the fleet," he ordered, his voice steady despite his growing unease. "Maintain formation, but delay the bioweapon release. I want full sensor sweeps of this entire system before we proceed." As his orders went out across the massive fleet, Zekthar couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were watching them. Waiting for something. The question was, waiting for what? The first human ships to emerge from Earth's defense grid looked pathetic. Admiral Rivera watched from the bridge of the aging cruiser Defiance as his small fleet moved to intercept the alien armada. 37 ships against 3,000. Even the aliens had to be wondering why humanity was bothering to fight. "Sir," called Lieutenant Torres from the communications station, "we're receiving surrender demands from the alien fleet." "Commander Zekthar wants us to stand down and prepare for boarding," Rivera smiled grimly. "Tell him we decline?" Through the viewscreen, he could see the massive alien fleet spreading out around Earth like a net of death. Each ship was larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built. The Kethler command vessel alone could probably destroy his entire force without breaking formation, but that was exactly what he was counting on. "All ships, this is Admiral Rivera," he said into the fleet-wide comm. "Execute Plan Lighthouse. In 30 seconds. Remember, we only need to hold them for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. It sounded like nothing, but against overwhelming alien firepower, it might as well have been 10 hours. Rivera's ships began moving into attack formation, their obsolete weapons charging for what looked like a suicide run. The alien response was swift and brutal. Energy beams that could cut through starship hulls like paper lanced out from the alien fleet. Human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light, their crews dying to buy precious seconds. "Sir, we've lost the Charleston and the Mumbai," Torres reported, his voice tight with emotion. "The aliens are cutting through our formation like we're not even there." "Hold position," Rivera ordered. 30 more seconds. On his command screen, he watched the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to keep their dying ship operational as alien fire tore through their hull. 15 seconds. The Defiance shuddered as a plasma beam burned through her port side. Half the lights went out and the artificial gravity flickered. 10 seconds. Another human ship died, taking 200 crew members with it. 5 seconds. Rivera gripped his command chair as alarms screamed throughout the bridge. 0. "All units across the galaxy," Rivera said into his communicator, his voice carrying on quantum frequencies to every hidden human installation. "This is Admiral Rivera. The last light fades. Show them what we really are." At first, nothing seemed to happen. The alien fleet continued its systematic destruction of the human defense force, confident in their overwhelming superiority. Commander Zekthar probably thought the battle would be over in minutes. Then the asteroids began to move. Deep in Earth's asteroid belt, chunks of rock that had drifted in stable orbits for millions of years suddenly shifted position. What the alien scouts had detected as hastily built installations revealed themselves to be something far more sophisticated. The asteroids weren't hiding human bases. They were human ships. "What in the void? Zekthar's voice crackled over the alien command frequency as his sensors tried to make sense of what they were seeing. Dozens of asteroids were unfolding like massive flowers, their rocky surfaces splitting apart to reveal gleaming metal hulls underneath. These weren't ships built in secret. They were ships that had been disguised so perfectly that even advanced alien sensors had mistaken them for natural space debris. "Sir?" called the alien communications officer, his crystalline form flickering with confusion. "We're detecting massive energy signatures from across the system. Multiple contacts emerging from everywhere." The tactical display lit up like a festival of lights as hidden human vessels revealed themselves throughout the Sol system. They had been hiding in the rings of Saturn, drifting among the ice chunks of the Kuiper Belt, even orbiting within the solar corona where no alien sensor would think to look. But that was just the beginning, light years away. On colony worlds, The aliens thought they had thoroughly surveyed. The same thing was happening on a much larger scale. On Kepler 442b, what had appeared to be a abandoned mining operation suddenly erupted with activity as massive underground hangar doors opened. Across the planet's surface, the ships that emerged were unlike anything in the galactic fleet databases. Where alien vessels followed traditional designs based on thousands of years of established engineering, these human ships looked like they had been built by people who had never heard of conventional wisdom. Some were long and thin like needles, designed for speed and stealth. Others were massive and angular, covered with weapon systems that bent the laws of physics in ways that shouldn't have been possible. All of them carried the unmistakable signature of human innovation, the ability to take existing technology and twist it into something completely unexpected. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of the underground city beneath Kepler 442b, watching her screens as the ship she had helped design launched into space. For 3 years, her engineers had been working around the clock to build vessels that could surprise enemies who thought they knew everything about human capabilities. Phase 1 complete, she reported to the quantum communication network that connected all the hidden human colonies. All ships launched successfully, beginning Phase 2. Across the galaxy, the same report echoed from world after world. Every planet the aliens had forced humanity to abandon was revealing its true nature. The underground cities weren't just hiding places. They were massive manufacturing facilities, shipyards, and weapons laboratories that had been operating in secret for years. Back in the Sol system, Commander Zekthar watched his tactical display with growing horror as the human fleet continued to grow. What had started as a one-sided massacre was rapidly becoming something else entirely. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "the human vessels are using weapon systems we've never encountered. Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases." On the main screen, Zekthar watched a human ship half the size of a Kethver destroyer somehow punch a hole through a battlecruiser's shields with a single shot. The weapon that had done it didn't even register on their sensors until after it fired. "How is that possible?" demanded General Fakemur of the Stone Legion. "Our shields can stop anything short of a stellar core explosion. Unless you're not shooting conventional energy at them," said Dr. Kashari from her laboratory ship. "Commander, these humans appear to have developed weapons based on principles we don't understand. Quantum manipulation, spatial distortion, maybe even temporal acceleration." The ethereal speaker pulsed with what might have been admiration or fear. "Impossible. Such technologies would require centuries of research by our greatest minds. The humans have had 50 years of unrestricted expansion and access to dozens of different planetary environments," Dr. Kashari pointed out, "plus their tendency toward rapid adaptation and innovation. They could have developed technologies we never imagined." As if to prove her point, another alien ship exploded as a human vessel fired what looked like a beam of twisted space itself. The attack didn't just destroy the ship. It folded the wreckage into itself until nothing remained but empty vacuum. "Sir," the communications officer called out urgently, "we're receiving reports from monitoring stations across the galaxy. Human ships are emerging from every system we thought we had contained. Thousands of them." Zekthar felt his certainty crumbling as reports flooded in from across the Confederation's territory. Every human colony was not only still active but had been building fleets in secret. Ships that were somehow technologically superior to anything the galaxy's greatest civilizations had produced. "How many ships?" he demanded. "Current count is over 15,000 and rising," came the reply. "Sir, they're not just defending. They're advancing on our positions." The tactical display showed the truth of it. Human ships weren't just emerging from hiding. They were moving toward alien strongholds with purpose and coordination that spoke of careful planning. This wasn't a desperate last stand. This was a carefully orchestrated military campaign. "They've been planning this for years," Zekthar said. Quietly, the evacuation, the hiding, the submission. All of it was a setup. Set up for what? General Fakemur growled. The answer came in the form of a transmission from Admiral Rivera. His face appeared on screens throughout the alien fleet, no longer showing the desperation of a defeated enemy, but the calm confidence of someone who held all the cards. "Commander Zekthar," Rivera said, "I believe you wanted us gone from the galaxy. Congratulations, you're about to get your wish, just not in the way you expected." Behind Rivera, displays showed star maps with human ships moving toward alien worlds across dozens of systems. Not fleeing, but advancing. "You see," Rivera continued, "when you gave us 72 hours to evacuate, you taught us something important. You taught us that coexistence was never really an option. You were always planning to kill us all." Zekthar tried to respond, but Rivera wasn't finished. "So we decided to solve the problem permanently. Not by leaving the galaxy, but by making sure threats like yours never happen again." The transmission ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence as they realized the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They hadn't just hidden from alien surveillance. They had used the time to build a military force that was now emerging from the shadows across the entire galaxy. The war that followed lasted 3 months and changed everything. Admiral Rivera stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Retribution, watching as the last Kefir stronghold fell to human forces. The massive fortress that had protected their homeworld for 10,000 years crumbled under weapons that the aliens still didn't understand. "Sir," reported Captain Sarah Chun, who had been promoted from ambassador to fleet commander, "the Kefir military command is requesting terms of surrender." Rivera nodded but didn't take his eyes off the tactical display. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as human forces systematically dismantled the military might of 12 species that had ruled space for millennia. It hadn't been a fair fight. It couldn't be, because the aliens had never learned to adapt. The first major battle had taken place at the Crystalline Collective's mining worlds. The aliens had expected their superior numbers and advanced shields to carry the day. Instead, they found themselves facing human ships that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. Dr. Elena Vasquez had spent years studying captured alien technology, not to copy it but to find its weaknesses. Every species in the Confederation had become so comfortable with their technological superiority that they had stopped innovating centuries ago. Humans had never stopped innovating. "The ethereal speaker is requesting personal communication," Chun reported. "Put it through." The being of pure energy appeared on the main screen, its usual brightness dimmed to a flicker. When it spoke, its voice carried none of the arrogance it had shown during the ultimatum. "Admiral Rivera," the speaker said, "we wish to discuss terms." "The time for discussion was before you decided to exterminate my species," Rivera replied. "Now there's only one conversation worth having." "What do you want?" Rivera smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Unconditional surrender. Complete disarmament of all Confederation military forces. And trials for war crimes." The speaker's form pulsed weakly. "You cannot seriously intend to occupy the entire galaxy." "Watch us." The truth was, humanity didn't need to occupy anything. The war had proven something that the aliens had never understood about human nature. When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans didn't just fight back. They evolved. Every battle had taught the human fleet something new. When the Aquatic Federation deployed their sonic weapons, human engineers developed armor that turned sound into energy. When the Stone Legion used gravity bombs, humans learned to manipulate gravity fields for their own use. The aliens had advanced technology, but humans had something more valuable: the ability to learn from everything and turn it into something new. Commander Zekthar had been captured during the battle for Kefir Prime. He sat now in a holding cell aboard the Retribution, his forearms bound, his chitinous shell scarred from the final desperate fighting. Rivera visited him the day before the formal surrender ceremony. "I don't understand," Zekthar said as Rivera entered the cell. "Your species was primitive." "Barely. Spacefaring for a century. How did you advance so quickly?" Rivera sat down across from the alien commander. "You want to know the difference between us and you?" Zekthar's mandibles clicked impatiently. You perfected your technology thousands of years ago and then stopped growing, Rivera explained. You became comfortable. Safe. You forgot that the universe doesn't care about comfort. But your weapons, Zekthar protested. The way your ships bend space and time. That should be impossible with your level of development. Should be, Rivera agreed. But when someone points a gun at your head, impossible becomes just another problem to solve. The formal surrender took place on the Confederation's capital world in the same chamber where Sarah Chun had been given humanity's ultimatum. But now the positions were reversed. The 12 species that had once ruled the galaxy sat in their hovering platforms, no longer looking down at humans but facing them as equals. Their military forces were broken, their fleets scattered or destroyed. Their confidence shattered. Sarah Chun stood where she had stood months before, but this time she wasn't alone. Representatives from every human colony flanked her, including people who had lived their entire lives underground waiting for this moment. The Galactic Confederation, Sarah announced, is hereby dissolved. In its place, we establish the Terran Protectorate with one simple mission, to ensure that no species ever again faces extinction because another species fears their potential. The ethereal speaker, now barely bright enough to see, spoke for the assembled aliens. What becomes of us? You learn, Sarah replied. You adapt, you grow, or you fade away. The choice is yours, but you'll make it as equals, not as masters. General Fakmer of the Stone Legion shifted on his platform. You could rule us completely. Why offer terms at all? Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Because the day we become what you were is the day we stop being human. The months that followed saw the greatest transformation in galactic history. Human technology, no longer hidden, spread across thousands of worlds. Medical advances that could extend alien lifespans by centuries. Agricultural techniques that could make barren worlds bloom. Energy systems that could power entire civilizations without destroying their environments. But the most important change wasn't technological. It was philosophical. Dr. Elena Vasquez established the first adaptive research institute on the former Confederation capital. Species that had remained unchanged for millennia began to work together, learning to see problems not as insurmountable obstacles but as opportunities for growth. The crystalline collective, whose rigid thought patterns had made them excellent miners but poor innovators, learned to think in new ways. The Aquatic Federation discovered that their water-based biology could be adapted for space exploration in ways they had never imagined. Even the proud Kethver began to change, their warrior culture evolving into something that protected rather than conquered. But not everyone accepted the new reality. The resistance movements that formed on several worlds still clung to the old ways of thinking. They saw human advancement as an aberration, something that needed to be corrected. Small terrorist attacks began targeting human installations and the aliens who worked with them. Rivera, now serving as the first director of galactic security, dealt with each incident personally. Not with overwhelming force, but with patient investigation and precise response. Sir, Captain Chun reported during one such investigation, we've identified the terrorist cell responsible for the bombing on Vega 7. They're holed up in an abandoned mining facility. How many? Rivera asked. 63 aliens, mostly former Confederation military. They've got hostages and enough firepower to level the surrounding settlements. Rivera nodded. Send in the Adaptation Corps. The Adaptation Corps was humanity's newest military unit, but they weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were problem solvers, specialists trained to find solutions that no one else had thought of. 6 hours later, the terrorist cell surrendered without firing a shot. The Adaptation Corps had simply redirected the facility's life support system to produce a mild sedative gas that put everyone to sleep. When they woke up, human medics were treating their injuries and human diplomats were ready to discuss their grievances. We don't want to rule you, Rivera explained to the terrorist leader as the alien was loaded onto a medical transport. We want you to learn to rule yourselves. But if you threaten innocent people, we'll stop you. And we'll do it in ways you never expected. Years passed. The galaxy that had once been rigid and unchanging became a place of constant growth and discovery. New technologies emerged from the collaboration between species. New art forms blended alien and human sensibilities. New philosophies combined the wisdom of ancient civilizations with human adaptability. Sarah Chun, now in her 70s, stood in the observatory of the space station that orbited the former Confederation capital. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of species working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old regime. "Any regrets?" asked Dr. Vasquez, who had joined her for the evening. Sarah considered the question. The human cost of the war had been high. Millions had died in the fighting, and the psychological trauma of facing extinction had marked an entire generation. But the alternative had been the complete destruction of humanity. "I regret that it was necessary," Sarah said finally. "But I don't regret that we survived." "The aliens are calling it the Great Awakening," Elena said. "The moment the galaxy learned to grow again." Through the observation window, a new ship was docking at the station. It was built jointly by human and alien engineers, incorporating technologies that neither species could have developed alone. Its mission was to explore beyond the galactic rim, to find new worlds and new challenges. "They wanted us gone," Sarah said quietly. "They thought we were too dangerous to exist alongside them," Elena nodded. "And now?" Sarah smiled as she watched. The mixed crew of humans and aliens preparing for their journey into the unknown. "Now we're all dangerous together." And that's exactly how it should be. The ship undocked and began its journey toward the edge of known space, carrying with it the hope that somewhere in the vast darkness, there were new problems to solve, new challenges to overcome, and new ways to prove that growth and adaptation were not things to be feared,